Alright, today we will discuss another chapter. This chapter number 2 of Microeconomics, Central Problems of an Economy. So the title of the chapter is Central Problems of an Economy. Here in this chapter we will discuss what are the central problems of an economy, and we have discussed in detail why such problems arise in economy, and we will go a bit deeper in this second chapter about the problems which is faced in the economy because of the resources being limited and wants are unlimited. So little bit of repetition from the chapter 1. So let us begin with the statement. Scarcity is the mother of all economic problems. So scarcity is considered as the mother of all economic problems in economy. So if there is no such thing as scarcity, then we would not have possibly, there will be no problem at all. But because of this scarcity, we are facing all sorts of problem in an economy. So what does economics deals about? So as we have discussed, economics is mainly concerned, with the use of resources for what? To satisfy human wants. The use of resources to satisfy the human wants. And we have studied that human wants are unlimited and productive resources are limited in supply. Because of that, we face these certain problems in economy. And because of this problem, goods and services are scarce because productive resources to produce those goods and services are also scarce. And I have given an instance that if there is no scarcity of resources, and goods would be free as air, so goods and services would be freely available if scarcity is not there. And with this problem, we are coupled with unlimited wants and scarce resources. So it is not possible to satisfy all wants of the people. Because of that, we face the problem. Since we are in a situation of unlimited wants coupled with scarce resources, it is not possible at all to satisfy all wants. So this gives rise to a problem of how to use these scarce resources, for the production of various goods and services for the satisfaction of human wants. So in this chapter, we will discuss what are the central problems of an economy and why these central problems of economy arises. And we will also use the concept of production possibility curve to explain the basic problem of an economy. And we will talk about the opportunity cost when we talk about the production possibility curve here. Okay, so as explained above, the scarcity of resources gives rise to various economic problems which we have to be solved by economic system. So let us see what are the central economic problems. So here it is given. Number 1 is what to produce, how to produce, for whom to produce, and what provisions should be made for economic growth. So these are mainly the 4 central economic problems that we face because of the scarcity of resources and unlimited wants of the people. So we shall see one by one. So what does this how to produce mean? So this means that a society has to decide which goods and in what quantities to be produced, what goods to be produced and in what quantity that goods and services has to be produced. That we have to decide. So the best example we can give is whether to produce guns or butter. So guns or butter has been the popular way, of describing this problem of choices that arises due to the scarcity of resources, whether to produce guns or to produce butter. But these choices between war goods, that is guns, or goods for civilian consumption, that is better. This is not the only problem of choice faced by the society. The society has to also face the society has to choose amongst many other several consumer goods themselves and decide about allocation of resources among them. In this regard, we can especially mention the choice between necessities and luxurious goods. And again, another dimension is regarding this choice is what amount of consumer goods and capital goods are to be produced. The first one we discuss is guns or butter, and then choice between necessities and luxuries, and again choice between consumer goods and capital goods. So there are so many other variety of choices that the society has to face in producing a particular goods. And secondly, the society has to decide not only which goods to be produced, but also they have to determine the specific quantity of each type of goods to be produced. After deciding what goods to produce, they have to also decide what quantity that particular good or each type of good are to be produced. So it is a well-established fact that resources are scarce, which means that society cannot produce unlimited amounts of even some of the selected goods that they have to produce. They have to produce to a certain level of even the selected goods which are to be produced. So that is all about what to produce. Second problem is how to produce. So this means that society has to decide with what combination of factors a society decide to produce particular goods or services, or what is the technique of production that is to be carried out in producing that goods and services, whether it can be a labor intensive method or whether to produce in a capital intensive method. And each technique has a different combination of resources like labor and capital. For instance, let's take for an example cotton cloth. Cotton cloth can be produced with either hand looms or power looms or automatic looms as used in modern textile mills. And we see that production with technique of hand looms use relatively more labor than capital and therefore represents labor intensive technique of production. Likewise, we have alternative techniques with different degrees of capital and labor intensity which are available in case of other commodities. So we have to think the type or the technique to produce the selected goods and services which are to be produced in an economy, whether it should be labor intensive or capital intensive. And it is obvious that the choice between different techniques of production would depend on the availability of the supplies of different factors of production and the relative price. If a particular area has a large amount of labor force, then they are likely to adapt the method of labor intensive. And if a region is rich in capital, then it is likely to adopt the method of capital intensive mode of production. Why are we talking about labor intensive or capital intensive? It is because of the same problem of scarcity, and because of this scarcity of resources, it is required that goods should be produced with the most efficient methods. We have to choose what is the most efficient method to produce. And if the economy uses its resources inefficiently, its output of goods would be smaller. Therefore, it is in society's interest that those techniques of production should be used that make greater use of the relative abundant factors of economics as much as possible in the use of those factors which are relatively scarce. So a producer or the one who produces goods would likely, tend to use the method which are available in, and in plenty, as I have mentioned above. The third problem that we face is for whom to produce. Who should get those goods and services that has been produced? So for whom to produce would mean, in a simple words, how the national product is to be distributed among the members of the society. So a society has to decide who should get how much from total output of goods and services. But again, it is a established fact that in a free market economy, who would get how much of national output depends on the money income of a person enjoys. Suppose you have a higher income, then you are in a position to get a large amount of output that is being produced. And if your income is less, then you will get less of the output that is being produced. So the greater the inequalities in the distribution of the money incomes, we will see that there will be a greater inequalities in the distribution of a national output. So they are, positively related. If there is inequalities in the distribution of income, then there will be increased or greater inequalities in the distribution of national output. And so a society, a policy, an economic policy has to, decide who should get how much from the total output of goods and services, so that inequality in a society is, reduced to a certain level, to a desirable level. Here we can talk about, different sources of income. Mainly, it is divided into two. First one is selling one's labor service. Wages and salaries, represent the income from work. And again, differences in wages, by various people arise due to difference in their, the level of skills, their productivity level, their education, their qualification, their expertise, and as well as their bargaining power. So income again is differentiated because of all these factors again. And secondly, income is earned, or income can be made from property such as, land, by selling land, factories, or other forms of capital. And these incomes, are the examples of income from property. You get income from selling your property. And the other one was you got income through your labor service. So these are the two main method or ways in which income can be obtained. So therefore, in order to explain, this distribution of output, or in determining who should get how much, we have to explain how distribution of income, there is wages of labor, rent of land, interest on capital, and profits of entrepreneurs are determined. So it is necessary, to explain the distribution of output. And we have to explain how distribution of income is determined when we have to explain the distribution of output. So the last economic problem that we face, that we have to discuss, is what provisions should be made for economic growth. And we have studied that economic growth means sustained increase in the production of goods and services over a period of time. And here, under this provision, under this problem, what provisions should be made for economic growth? A society has to decide how much savings and investment investment and savings would mean, that is how much sacrifice of present consumption should be made for future economic progress. How much sacrifice of your present consumption has to be dedicated for your future progress. If you used up all the resources that is available at present consumption, then nothing will be left for future progress or future economic growth. Then you will not have a sustained economic growth. So a society has to decide how much savings and investment, that is sacrificing your present consumption for the progress or for the future economic progress. So the greater the sacrifice you made at present, the greater or the more progress you will see in the future. So investment would mean, investment for the expansion of the stock of capital requires some sacrifice of your present consumption. For capital accumulation or capital formation, you need to invest, you need to save. But saving and investment would mean you have to sacrifice your present consumption. And once the greater rate of investment is achieved, the greater the sacrifice of present consumption, which would lead to the higher rate of economic growth. So if no provision is made, if provision is not made at all for investment in the present, then it is true that the standards of living in the future will not rise. So indeed, if no such provision is made for future, the future productive capacity of an economy and also the levels of living, standard of living, will obviously decline. So the answer to this is that if you want your future progress to be positive, or if you want to have higher economic progress in the future, your saving, your investment should increase. Saving and investment would mean sacrificing your present consumption. So these are mainly the central economic problems that we face because of the scarcity and the unlimited wants of the people. The first one is what to produce, how to produce, for whom to produce, and what provisions should be made for economic growth. So these are the 4 central economic problems.